John, from your experience, what are the main differences between working on an independent production and a studio production?
The routine is basically the same. You know, usually the studio has more dough and more suits, but the basic process, you know, of going to work every day, you know, sometimes the food's better with a studio, but you know, the process is of making a movie is, you know, the same. You got to get so many shots every day, and they've got to fit together. And, as far as being, do they interfere more with the process and with the script and so forth? It depends on the studio and depends on the independent production. They can both be a pain in the butt, or they both can be terrific. I've had it both ways. I prefer terrific. So lots of people think there's a difference between independent films and studio films, and that if it's an independent film, then you're surrounded with people who love you and love the process and don't want to be commercial, they just want to be good and so forth. Well, you know, I don't buy into that idea. Some independent films are good, some are bad. The same thing with studio pictures. There can be, you know, big pains in the neck in both worlds. So there's nothing magical about the independent film, and usually it's independent because they couldn't get a studio to finance it. Because once you have the independent film finished, now you got to find somebody to sell it, you know, or otherwise it's sitting on a shelf gathering dust. And the selling of the thing and getting into theaters, I don't have to tell you, that's a big trick. Okay, so people say these days you could never get Rocky done. There's a picture that comes from the heart, and they don't make those anymore. That's baloney, sure they do. Silver lining playbook. You know, there's all sorts of examples of pictures that, because people like to see them, and the studios know that, and sometimes they make them well, and sometimes they don't. And Rocky wasn't an independent picture. That was United Artists at a low budget, but it was part of the system. Now, could that get made today? Well, if the same circumstances existed, it's conceivable. In other words, if you had a couple of producers that had a good track record with a studio like Chardoff and Winkler had with UA, they had a low budget picture, and if they put up their houses to guarantee the completion, you know, and even though it was an unknown as Stallone was at the time, it's conceivable it could happen again, especially when the people at UA wanted to see this guy Stallone that they were going to bet $1 million on. So they looked at Lords of Flatbush, which had come out a year or so before Rocky. And Stallone played this Brooklyn guy in it, and he was just terrific. And the studio said, okay, so now it's the first day and they're looking at the rushes. So, where's Stallone? That's guy Stallone. No, Stallone's a blonde. They thought they were buying Perry King, who was in Lords of Flatbush. They thought, because he looked like looked like a movie star, but they didn't. They bought Stallone. So that's how well organized everything is.
That is a great story.
That's amazing.
I have never heard. And Perry King went to Yale with Lloyd. So
Yeah, we put him in his first movie.
His very
Rapid
first
Genie.
movie was with Lloyd.
We almost killed his career.
I wanted him for the Karate Kid. I wanted him for the bad karate teacher, but he didn't want to give up TV.
Huh, interesting. No
Wow.
kidding. Gee.
That's an interesting.
Too bad.
Yeah, it could be
He's a
like
good guy.
a young
Mistake.
Nazi.
Yeah, he's a very good guy.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy and a good actor.
Yeah. So the experience then wouldn't be necessarily...
In other words, could Rocky get made today? Sure, if they, you know, thought that the Stallone character was Perry King. Otherwise, iffy. No, who knows? Because look at Justin Bieber. Look at the way nobody can become somebody so quickly with YouTube and the social media and all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, it's a lot different than in 1975 when Rocky came knocking on the door.
So there are fewer gatekeepers?
I think,
more gatekeepers?
well, I think there are more venues now. There's more places to get your stuff up on a screen. Now, if you want that screen to be the big screen at the local mall, that's a different story. But that venue is disappearing. I mean, I can't remember last time I went to a movie. You know, there's so much stuff on Netflix and so forth, and then fortunately, because I'm a member of the Academy, I get all these movies in the fall. I can, if I'm not in trance, next. It's great.
How did you meet Lloyd Kaufman?
Lloyd who?
Definitely.
How did I meet Lloyd Kaufman? Oh, you don't want to know about that. This is PG, right?
Well, have you seen
did
Cruising?
What?
I said, have you seen Cruising?
Cruising. Oh, God. I saw Cruising in Berlin. I was making the formula. And there was some big film festival or something, and big theater in Berlin. And we went in, and the theater didn't have an aisle down the middle. It had a very wide thing in the middle and 2 aisles down the side. So, because I was a big deal, I got to sit right in the center, right? So I got a great thing. Well, this thing shows up, and I am, get out of here. This is, and I said, I don't want to have this in my head. Ugh! And so I have to get up and go through like 20 people in the middle of this big deal screening. So that's all. I saw maybe the first 10 minutes of Cruising, and I took a powder. Anyway, that's not the subject.
So how did you meet Lloyd Kaufman?
Yes, well, he was in Cruising. So I'm at Canon Films, and I'm just winding up shooting on Guess What We Learned in School Today, which was a little sex farce. And I've had the good fortune of getting them to agree to make Joe, a script by Norman Wexler, that they had raised money to make some other script, and at the last minute they realized that that script would make a terrible movie, and they didn't want to give the money back, so they had to make something. And I said, well, remember that outline that we showed you, Joe? That'd make a good movie. And they said, all right. So very reluctantly, they said yes. So I don't know if that's how Lloyd got his job there in anticipation of that happening, or if he was just able to convince them that they needed another hand. But I put him to work immediately because I was in the cutting room for Guess What We Learned in School Today, and we had 2,000-foot reels. Now, in those days, 2,000 feet of film, well, still today, but nobody does film anymore. 2,000 feet of film was 20 minutes. And it came on a reel about like this. And you had maybe 3 or 4 of them on these spindles, and you have to crank them, and it's really a pain in the neck. So Lloyd got to work on that immediately. But this was after he told me that a little of his history, which I was very impressed by. Went to Trinity, this very snooty school in New York. I had gone to other snooty schools that I got kicked out of. So I was well aware of Trinity. Then he told me that he went to Yale with George Bush. Very impressed. Then he went to Africa in the Peace Corps. And then he started making movies. So I said, this is a serious person. I think he's going to be qualified to rewind the 2,000-foot reels. And I was never disappointed.
Amazing. What was your memory of him when you first started working together?
Eager and intense, and always with an opinion, and good ideas, and a real passion. He really loved the whole process.
What can you paint a picture of Lloyd as an aspiring filmmaker?
In somber shades.
Well, maybe repeat the question. If I were to paint a
So
picture.
in those days, Lloyd had already made a picture or two, and he certainly wanted to make more. And as soon as I got to know him, I said, this guy is terrific. And I had the good fortune of making another picture right after Joe, and I think Lloyd was my production manager on that one. So he really was resourceful and knew the process and was doing it. He wasn't talking about it. He was working for me or other people or making his own movies. So as long as I've known him, he was in production or pre-production.
How would you describe Troma's spirit and aesthetic?
It's what?
But again, how would you?
How would I describe Troma's?
Sorry, I interrupted you. Start again.
How would I describe? How would I describe Troma's spirit and what? Aesthetic?
So maybe just say, I would describe Troma's spirit and aesthetic.
Wait a minute.
That was a pretty good reaction right there.
Thank you.
That was funny.
Hold up, Lloyd.
I would describe Troma's spirit as passionate, and I would describe Troma's aesthetic as bizarre. And I'm being kind.
What role do you feel Troma has played in independent cinema, if any?
Okay, the role that Troma has played in the world of independent cinema is a major one. I can't think of who comes in second. Again, independent cinema is what you've got when you don't have a distributor. And I'm not an expert in the field, but Troma is one, if not the only outfit that can get their movies into a movie theater these days, because the movie theaters are all pre-booked by big studios and what have you, so it's a very tough trick to get your independent, and Troma would certainly be an independent, into the mainstream marketplace. Very, very difficult to do if you're not somehow in the mainstream. And again, my definition of independent means that you don't have a distributor.
Good definition.
Now, the fact that you don't have a distributor for a movie house, that doesn't mean you're washed up. Because you can get your stuff out on YouTube and all the myriad other venues, and who knows what will happen. I remember when we were starting out, boy, if you didn't get it into a theater, that was it. There was no plan B. And to get a screening, to get people to show up and at 4 o'clock and get the room ready and get the film there, and boy, what a production number. Now you hand somebody a disc or tell them to look at it on YouTube.
What does it take to dedicate yourself to film?
Okay, so how do people who do what Lloyd does and what I do, how do people get into the movie? Why would they want to do it rather than be a dentist or something else? They love the movies. They love stories. They love make-believe. You gotta love it. You know, if you're lucky, the money's not bad, but the fun of doing it and having the rush of seeing it work when it does work, it's priceless. It's just terrific. So you gotta really be passionate about the thing, and don't worry about getting sleep. You can get sleep later. But if you don't have that passion, then you should find something that you do have passion for.
James Gunn, he says you should do what you're good at, not what you want to do, but do what you're good at.
Who's going to say you're no good at it? And you got to believe whoever it is for you to accept the fact that you're no good at it. You know, and if you do accept the fact that you're no good at it, maybe you're not. You know, and you should do something else. But if you don't think that person telling you that you're no good at it, that they're correct, then keep doing it. Look at it. There are countless stories of scripts that nobody wanted to do and they got made and they were hits. You know, so just because somebody says, "Nah, you know, you ought to try something else," doesn't mean you should. It also doesn't mean that you shouldn't.
I've had 40 years of I've been there. Now, let's see, what is the future for film? What do you feel about it? And I guess film, we mean filmed entertainment. What do you feel?
The future of film, it's cloudy. No, there's an explosion. There's many explosions. Probably many explosions. You know, the future is terrific. People, there's too many people. The population of the Earth is out of control. You know, so there's talk about a sucker being born every minute. It's every 3 seconds now. So the future for movies is terrific. The audience is growing, and people are more and more affected by movies. They imitate movies more. Movie stars are bigger deals than ever before. So the future of movies is terrific.
Is the future going to continue to be the approximately 90-minute or 3-hour, whatever the 90-minute to 3-hour format, or do you think the future becomes video games and?
Those of us who think that the future of movies are in jeopardy take heart, because they're not. People are going to want to be entertained. They're going to want to sit in the dark. Now, Frank Capra gave me a good piece of advice when I said, you know, how do you do what you do so well? He said, remember, they're sitting in the dark. You can't let them go to sleep. You got to keep them awake. Very important. So people are going to flock to the movies as long as they're there, because the alternative, what, they're going to read a book? Not likely.
Great. Thank you.